Warning. You're about to enter the arena and join the battle to save America with your host, Sean Parnell.
Good evening, Battle Crew. What is up, America? From sea to shining sea and everybody in between. Welcome, Patriots. It is Thursday. Can you believe it? This week has flown by, and I just want to thank you for being patient with me and showing up here tonight, even though there was no show yesterday. I had my very first speaking engagement that I had in a very long time. I used to do speaking engagements a lot, probably 35 to 50 a year, spent a lot of time on the road, a lot of time away from the family. And I have to say, a speaking engagement every now and again is completely fine, but that lifestyle that I used to live a long time ago, can't do it anymore, especially with kids. But I had an amazing opportunity, and not to talk too much about this because I have a huge show today. And by the way, I'm your host, Sean Parnell, combat vet, best-selling author, humble servant of America. I'm super psyched to be here with you all. I really missed you all yesterday as well, by the way. But I had the opportunity to speak to a pretty amazing mortgage company called Movement Mortgage, and they reached out to me to speak. And this is a company that, upon its founding, pledged to give away 50% of everything that it made. And so they brought me down there to speak to some of their employees, and I got to tell the story of Outlaw Platoon. And I spoke for about an hour. And the event itself ended with giving a service dog to veterans, which was a very deserving veteran. And it was, immensely powerful because service dogs, look, folks, there is a dire need for service dogs here in this country. The wait list is really long. The dogs are really expensive, and we don't have a mechanism in this country to get dogs into the hands of our veterans who in many cases are really struggling and need a battle buddy. So these events like this are really important now more than ever, since the eyes of this nation are really no longer focused on the wars that America fought in Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 plus years. Think about it. 5-6 years ago, you were probably seeing commercials for the Wounded Warrior Project all the time, all sorts of veterans charities. We were still fighting in Iraq, still fighting in Afghanistan. It seemed like the wars were front and center. Now, especially after Biden's disastrous surrender in Afghanistan, the wars are not front and center anymore. And I have to tell you as well, this is the first time that I've told the story of Outlaw Platoon since the disastrous surrender in Afghanistan. And I would be lying to you if I told you that from that stage, I didn't think about the disaster that was Afghanistan and what Biden did there. It really, really bothers me. It upsets me a lot. And if it upsets me, I can guarantee you it upsets other veterans as well. But yeah, and another thing, folks, being on the road, again, traveling, we don't travel much around here. I really throw everything I have into this show to give you the best show as humanly possible. But oh my God, traveling is so expensive. Seriously, folks, an Uber 10 minutes from my hotel, from the airport to my hotel, $60 to $70. In some cases, well over $100. I bought this like roast beef sandwich on a ciabatta, just plain roast beef and cheese. Not that you need to hear about all this stuff. And yes, I acknowledge purchasing this stuff in an airport, so you're paying a little bit of a premium, but over $17 for just a sandwich, I'm telling you, it is impossible to encapsulate and describe adequately what Biden has done to this nation's currency, what Biden has done to this nation's economy. It's crazy. And I do mean just insane how expensive things have gotten. And so with all that said, thank you for being back today. We're going to talk about right off the top, honoring the 80th anniversary of D-Day and what right looks like. Of course, Biden is in Normandy in this bizarro world visit, and what wrong looks like. What he did today was hugely insulting to our nation's veterans. And Hannity's interview with Trump, I'm not sure that many of y'all saw it, but I didn't like it. And also, Republicans going to double down on this, just don't understand what time it is, but they need to step it up and fight back because the time is short on this nation. Talk about a little bit about what McCabe said. The deep state needs to be held accountable and so much more. Oh, and first, before I tell you about some of our sponsors, which we couldn't do the show without, we've got sponsors now. They help us keep the lights on, and we're so grateful to have them because they're great, strong, patriotic, conservative companies. And I'm sure you can probably tell that I'm kind of all over the map. I'm really excited to be back doing the show with you all after having taken a day off. And you should see my show notes. I've got a huge show planned today. I don't know how I'm going to get it in all in an hour, so I might go over a little bit today. But I got an opportunity traveling. I didn't use Uber to and from the airport because they're just so ungodly expensive. But I did get an opportunity to use Book a Limo, and they were pretty freaking amazing. They were definitely cheaper than Uber, and they were pretty amazing. So if you have an opportunity to use them while you're traveling or you need a car service for business or travel, you should definitely check them out. And speaking of great sponsors, got to tell you very quickly about a couple that this show would not be possible without, one of which is Done with Debt. Debt is something that's in the lives of all of us. Commander Melanie and I, the Parnell family, we're in debt. We've been in debt for a couple years. We struggle with it. We think about it. It occupies a lot of space up here. You tend to go to bed thinking about this stuff. You wake up thinking about it as well. And here's the truth. The system is designed to trap you in debt. High interest credit cards and loans make it nearly impossible to pay off your debt, and insane inflation keeps you stuck paycheck to paycheck. Done with Debt is your lifeline. Done with Debt has an ingenious new strategy to help you erase your debt faster and easier than you thought possible. Done with Debt analyzes all the debt options that you qualify for. They know how to reduce bills. They know how to cut interest rates. The skilled staff of negotiators know how to get debt out of your life permanently without bankruptcy and without a loan. You should check them out. Done with Debt are the experts in brilliant strategies for eliminating debt, but you have to hurry because some debt solutions are time sensitive. Here's how easy they make it. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Select VNN or Vigilant News Network at checkout. That's donewithdebt.com. Also, I've got to tell you about My Patriot Supply. We all have a sense that something bad is coming, which is why here at Fort Parnell, we're doing everything that we can to get off the grid and not rely on the government for anything. If we're doing that, you should too. I'm telling you, we got this chicken coop, we got the goats, we got the goat pen, we've got this garden. Pretty sure Commander Melanie's going to be rolling out chickens pretty soon. So we have a sense that something is up, something big, something suspicious, and you can't really quite pinpoint it, but you can't deny it either. And all you have is to trust your gut. So listen to it and prepare with My Patriot Supply. Since 2008, My Patriot Supply has helped millions of American families prepare for the uncertain future. Many of them choose 3-month emergency food kits, folks, but check them out. Like, they're an awesome company. They've got lots of different opportunities and offers there. They even got 1-month emergency food kits. But with 22 food and drink varieties, there'll be no food boredom. With over 2,000 calories a day, there'll be no starvation, unless, of course, you're me and you require 5,000 calories a day, in which case 2,000 calories doesn't really cut it. And sealed inside ultra durable 4-layer packaging, these ready hour meals last up to 25 years in storage. So stock up on all the food kits your family needs at my website, preparewithvnn.com. $200 off every single kit. It's a really great deal. Protect yourself, your people, your family, your loved ones. Get your kits at preparewithvnn.com. They'll ship fast and they will always ship free. That is preparewithvnn.com. So today, we honor a defining moment in American history and in world history, folks, the 80th anniversary of D-Day. On June 6, 1944, the courage and resolve of over 73,000. Really try to wrap your mind around that number. 73,000 American troops were tested on the beaches of Normandy. These brave men, alongside allied brothers, embarked on a mission that would change the course of World War II and really save the world. When I honor these men, that's how I speak about them. Had America, we look back at all of the conflicts that we've been in, be hard pressed to find one that we've won since World War II. But the reason we won in World War II is that we were all in. Our country, Democrats, Republicans, independent, everybody for the most part, the vast percentage of America was in fighting that war. But the men who stormed the beaches of Normandy that day gained a foothold and eventually saved Europe. Their selfless sacrifice and indomitable spirit laid the groundwork for really the freedom that we cherish today, the freedom that we see that is slipping away every single day. So as we remember the valor of our fellow Americans and their unwavering commitment to liberty, we should reflect on their extraordinary sacrifice. We should reflect on their legacy. We should reflect on the country that we inherited because of these men. And I'm going somewhere with all of this, so just stick with me here. We're going to be tying all of this into news of the day, trust me. I wish that I had fully understood then when I decided to sign on the dotted line after 9/11, join the military, go to combat, fight for America. I wish that I understood the legacy of what it meant to serve fully back then. I understood it academically. And I was talking to Commander Melanie about this today, in that it's hard to talk about because I understand the history of World War II, Normandy, Pointe du Hoc, fighting through hedgerows there to gain a foothold in Europe, knocking out German machine gun nests, fighting all the way to Berchtesgaden and Hitler's Eagle's Nest, and liberating concentration camps all over Europe. I've studied that history. I know it academically. But there's something about the way that I understand it now that is so much more impactful and really resonates in my heart and soul. And I wish I had that understanding back then. And I had this realization when I was speaking on the stage at West Point to a group of brand new commissioned brand new commissioned infantry lieutenants. So these were young lieutenants who hadn't been to their unit yet, hadn't taken a platoon. These are the real meat eaters of the United States Army. And look, everybody has a mission and serves in the United States Army. I'm not trying to say look, I was in the infantry. I happen to think the infantry is better than everybody else. That's just because I was in the infantry. But I understand, put your boots and your uniform on and serve this country and volunteer to serve this country in a time of war. You are a freaking hero. But I'm just saying, I'm a little biased. So these are the real meat eaters. These are the door kickers. These are the ground pounders. Wars are not won without men and now women on the ground in the infantry, holding ground and fighting. So I was speaking to these young infantry lieutenants, and I realized in talking to them and being steeped in West Point history, just what an extraordinary history that we have, and that we really truly are standing on the shoulders of giants here. And one of those giants is Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., the son of Teddy Roosevelt. He had one of the most remarkable stories from D-Day, and I talked about this with somebody at my event yesterday, so it's fresh on my mind. But at 56 years old, Teddy Roosevelt Jr. was a World War I veteran and Assistant Secretary of the Navy and Governor of Puerto Rico. He requested 3 times to lead the first wave of the assault on Utah Beach before finally being granted permission by Eisenhower himself. And so despite being under heavy artillery fire, he led his men across the beach in return for the following units in an act of just extraordinary heroism. I mean, legendary heroism. Part of Operation Neptune, Roosevelt led the assault on Utah Beach during strong tidal currents. During the first 20 landing craft landed the first 20 landing craft, they landed 2 kilometers south of what the intended target was. And Roosevelt was one of the first dudes off the boat. He quickly assessed the situation under heavy enemy fire and declared, "We'll start the war from right here." Of course, that line became famous. but he repeatedly led groups from the beach over a seawall, and he fought inland. I mean, the guy is legendary. It's just amazing to read a little bit about this guy's story. But 36 days later, on July 12th, 1944, 36 days after D-Day, Teddy Roosevelt Jr. died in his sleep of a heart attack at the age of 56. And General Omar Bradley later said that Roosevelt's actions on Utah Beach were the bravest thing he'd ever seen. And General Patton wrote to his wife, "He was one of the bravest men I ever knew." These are the heroes that we should be, that we as Americans need to prop up today. And again, we're going to get to Biden at Normandy here in a second, but we got to talk about the right way to do this and the wrong way. I got to talk about Richard Winters as well, Dick Winters, because he was my hero prior to joining the military. And he was born in Pennsylvania, right in Western Pennsylvania, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Of course, if you've watched Band of Brothers, then you know all about Dick Winters, but he became just the type of leader, combat leader, that I wanted to be when I got my opportunity to serve this country in combat. This guy jumped into Normandy and fought to Hitler's Eagle's Nest, leading combat troops the entire time, led from the front the entire time. He's just the epitome of what it means to be a hard-nosed, tough American fighting for a righteous cause to save the world and our country from the Nazis. And of course, after the war, Winters came back to Pennsylvania and lived a quiet life on a farm in Lebanon County. And so we had a real president when Ronald Reagan was in office, and he spoke to the Rangers and at Normandy for one of the anniversaries there, and speaking directly to the Rangers who scaled the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc. I want you to listen to how he honors our troops on that day. And again, we're going to get to Biden here in a second, and you will see a huge difference.
The rescue began. Here the Allies stood and fought against tyranny in a giant undertaking unparalleled in human history. We stand on a lonely, windswept point on the northern shore of France. The air is soft, but 40 years ago at this moment, the air was dense with smoke and the cries of men, and the air was filled with the crack of rifle fire and the roar of cannon. At dawn on the morning of the 6th of June, 1944, 225 Rangers jumped off the British landing craft and ran to the bottom of these cliffs. Their mission was one of the most difficult and daring of the invasion: to climb these sheer and desolate cliffs and take out the enemy guns. The Allies had been told that some of the mightiest of these guns were here, and they would be trained on the beaches to stop the Allied advance. The Rangers looked up and saw the enemy soldiers at the edge of the cliffs shooting down at them with machine guns and throwing grenades, and the American Rangers began to climb. They shot rope ladders over the face of these cliffs and began to pull themselves up. When one Ranger fell, another would take his place. When one rope was cut, a Ranger would grab another and begin his climb again. They climbed, shot back, and held their footing. Soon, one by one, the Rangers pulled themselves over the top, and in seizing the firm land at the top of these cliffs, they began to seize back the continent of Europe. 225 came here. After 2 days of fighting, only 90 could still bear arms. And behind me is a memorial that symbolizes the Ranger daggers that were thrust into the top of these cliffs. And before me are the men who put them there. These are the boys of Pointe du Hoc. These are the men who took the cliffs. These are the champions who helped free a continent. And these are the heroes who helped end a war.
That's a real American president right there. That's how you honor the service and sacrifice of veterans who risked everything to save this country, save the world. You just talk about their service. You don't make political points. You don't try to drive the political football down the field on the backs of dead soldiers. You know, every anniversary of D-Day, every year, the French citizens take sand from Omaha Beach and rub it onto the gravestones. What you're watching here is a French citizen take a sand from Omaha Beach and rub it onto the gravestones to highlight the names of Americans who've given their last full measure of devotion to save them. This is what honoring the legacy of people who have sacrificed everything. This is what right looks like. And part of me wonders, are we losing that? The French citizens do that for all 9,386 American soldiers buried there. 9,386 Americans are buried in France, fighting to secure a foothold on that beachhead. And I wonder if the vast majority of America understands what it means to serve this country. Have we gotten so far away from service and sacrifice that maybe perhaps we don't know what it is anymore? Because I have to say, walking through the airport yesterday, I wonder, you know, I have this like Purple Heart lapel pin that I wear on a suit jacket that I have when I speak. I wonder if the vast majority, this isn't about me, by the way, but I wonder if the vast majority of Americans even understand or know what that means. And it got me thinking, we don't teach anything about military culture or medals or anything like that in school. So why would anybody know? And if people don't know, how do they know the true cost of freedom? All right, I'm going to talk about Joe Biden here and his disastrous appearance at Normandy. We're going to get into politics and news of the day and how not to celebrate the legacy of our combat veterans here in a second. But let me tell you about sweetamine. Sweetamine is composed mainly of the amino acid glycine, and that's the nutrient the immune system uses to regulate chronic inflammation. Most of the diseases that make people sick and die these days are rooted in chronic inflammation, mainly due to glycine deficiency. The aches and pains that we feel as we get older are mainly due to chronic inflammation. So, folks, listen, I have real serious chronic inflammation after serving 7 years in the light infantry. I'm telling you, folks, this stuff works. You should really check it out. Once daily serving of sweetamine provides 8 grams of glycine, and that's enough to stop all excess inflammation right where it starts. With once daily sweetamine, most people feel the reduction in pain after just a few days. Sweetamine is also awesome for after your workouts. So look, folks, it takes a couple of days. I mean, people say that it takes that sweetamine said, and Dr. Joel say it takes a couple of days for people to really start feeling the difference. Took me about a week, but I will take this for the rest of my life. And everybody that I know now who's taking it has told me that yes, this stuff is working for them, and they're completely bought in. So a 12-day challenge trial pack of Sweetamine is only $19.95. That's with free shipping, and it's sold completely risk-free. Use Sweetamine just like sugar and your favorite beverage in a smoothie, sprinkled on your cereal, or any way you like. All natural Sweetamine contains no sugar, no carbs, only has 24 calories, and is great for diabetics. You can buy Sweetamine online at sweetamine.com or call 855-GET-SWEET. That's 855-438-7933. You can buy Sweetamine online at sweetamine.com or call 855-GET-SWEET. That's 855-438-7933. Use the promo code SEAN, S-E-A-N, and you save $5. Telling you folks, stuff really works. So we've been talking about the right way to honor veterans, and we used Ronald Reagan as an example. And we talked about the service and sacrifice of veterans. And that's what it's all about, folks, talking about the service, the sacrifice, what it means to protect and defend freedom. It's not about making political points. It's not about doing any of that. It's about making sure subsequent generations know what it means to serve. Biden had an opportunity to do that today. Did he? Absolutely not. He was an embarrassment to this country on the world stage yet again. And he and all these Democrats are using our World War II dead in a memorial ceremony that is meant to honor their legacy to talk about Russia and Ukraine, to push war propaganda for an American proxy war that serves no vital interest to the United States of America at all. It's disgusting. Listen.
They've inflicted on the Russian aggressors, they've suffered tremendous losses in Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded.
Folks, this is so unbelievably inappropriate. Here we are. Biden is talking about Russia, Ukraine, and war propaganda when he's at an event intended to honor those who fought and died defending the world during World War II. And here Biden is talking about Ukraine and killing Russians. Never mind the fact that Ukraine is infested, the Ukrainian military is infested with Nazis. So imagine being a World War II veteran, lose your friend to Nazis, go through hell fighting Nazis in the European campaign, and now listening to an American president talk about killing Russians, who, by the way, they're not an ally now, but they were an ally back then, killing 350,000 people in the most brazen way possible and backing Nazis. This is total bizarro world, folks. And let me tell you something else. As someone who has seen combat up close and personal for a long damn time, I can assure you that these men, all of the veterans who were sitting behind Joe Biden as he gave that ridiculous speech, took no joy in killing. It's part of the job. It's a terrible part of the job, but you take no joy in it. And then you got Biden, I can't get over bragging, an American president bragging about 350,000 dead. Guarantee you it rings hollow to those men. And what he's essentially doing, folks, is using the heroism, the honor, the valor, the sacrifice of those who gave their lives in defense of America during World War II to justify pushing us to the very edge of World War III. If that is not the most disgusting use of political propaganda that I've heard in a very long time, that I don't know what is. And this brings me to my point about Democrats. They are soulless. Nothing is beneath them. A mass shooting that involves, God forbid, children, crime, where people lose their life, discarding, Americans being killed because of the invasion of their southern border. Nothing. They will use anything. Holidays, they will use anything to push a political agenda and score a few cheap political points. And folks, I'm telling you, we've got to do better in this country. The media needs to wise up and look at what's happening, because America cannot survive this insanity for that much longer. That's not hyperbole. I mean it. And here, like, listen, you talk about Biden speaking at this event, talking about war propaganda between Ukraine and Russia. Biden used this entire trip to talk about Ukraine and Russia. Here's Biden in an interview, I think, with Good Morning America, talking about, you guessed it, Ukraine and Russia.
Let me ask you about what Vladimir Putin said last night about this authorization of American weapons inside Russia. He said the supply of high-precision weapons to Ukraine for strikes on Russian territory is direct participation in this war. He went on to say that this is the way to serious problems, and again talked about Russia's nuclear capabilities. Does that concern you?
I've known him for over 40 years. He He's concerned me for 40 years. He's not a decent man. He's a dictator, and he's struggling to make sure he holds this country together while still keeping this assault going. We're not talking about giving them weapons to strike Moscow, to strike the Kremlin, to strike just across the border where they're receiving significant fire from conventional weapons used by the Russians to go into Ukraine to kill the Ukrainians.
This makes me so angry. The fact that the fact that Biden is doing anything but honoring the veterans who gave. I mean, I keep saying this over and over again, but these Democrats are ghouls. And can we please address Biden saying he's known Putin for 40 years? So I'm not real great at math. So if folks in the live chat who are watching, listening, that takes me back to 1984 when Putin was a KGB agent and Joe Biden was a young Democrat senator from the state of Delaware. Is it worth asking maybe why? First of all, I mean, I think that it's pretty safe to assume that what Joe Biden's saying is bullshit since he's been a pathological liar his whole life. But is it at least worth someone in the media asking why in God's name would Joe Biden be involved with a KGB agent as a young Democrat senator from Delaware? It's almost like if the reverse were true, if Trump said something like this, the entire Democrat Party would be screaming that Trump was a Russian asset because they did it for far less. So if we believed in the golden rule, which I know you all do, the fact that anything the Democrats accuse us of or anything the Democrats say is really, if they take the opposite, it's really true of them. They project onto Republicans what they themselves do. So I guess then maybe if we believe in the golden rule, then it stands to reason that Biden is himself a Russian asset. After all, he's known Vladimir Putin for 40 years. So it wasn't just Joe Biden at this speech honoring the 80th anniversary of those who fought on D-Day and to save the world. His entire administration is all in on pushing war propaganda. Again, using a remembrance ceremony to push war propaganda. World War II ceremony to prop up propaganda for what could potentially be World War III. Listen to Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken, talk about just that.
The same resolve that the extraordinary men and women that we're celebrating today showed then, he's showing now. Because they did what they did, we're here today. And we not only have a responsibility to honor what they did, but the real way to honor it is to make sure that we're good in our time, in our moment, in standing up to the challenges that we face. And one of those we see now is aggression from Russia, not only against Ukraine, but against the very principles at the heart of the international system that were put in place after World War II to try to make sure that we didn't have another world war, that we maintain peace and security. And the president's determined to make sure we're standing up today just as they stood up 80 years ago.
Again, folks, makes me sick to my stomach. And as you probably noticed, the Democrats are taking an odd approach to the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Obviously, we've well established that they're using the 80th anniversary of D-Day to push war propaganda for a war that's not even close to in the same league that is World War II. Again, that's the Ukrainian proxy war, but using World War II memorial to saber rattle for World War III. And of course, they're making it disgustingly political. Listen to what Hillary Clinton said on X today. 80 years ago today, thousands of brave Americans fought to protect democracy on the shores of Normandy. This November, all we have to do is vote. Again, it's impossible to encapsulate just how loathsome a comment like that is. But it's also very predictable, right? If we understand who the Democrats really are. Let's honor the sacrifice of America's greatest generation by comparing Trump to Hitler. You got to admire the Democrat commitment to the narrative. And again, using literally any tragedy, holiday, whatever to push that narrative. But folks, these people they are the enemies of America. Biden, Clinton, Obama, all these Democrat hacks, the media. As long as ghouls like this, like Hillary Clinton and Biden, are in power in America, America will most certainly flounder. Might even collapse. It's just impossible to truly understand how it seems like it just seems like, folks, we've gotten so far off course. Our World War II veterans deserve so much better. And so I feel bad for them. I really do. I feel bad for them. And of course, yesterday, this Wall Street Journal piece comes out, the title of which is "Behind Closed Doors, Biden Shows Signs of Slipping." And I'm thinking to myself as I'm traveling yesterday, really? Just behind closed doors? Because every single time that dude makes a public appearance, he's like crapping his pants, he's slipping and falling, he's stumbling over his words, he's pausing for extraordinarily long times. And yeah, he did the exact same thing yesterday. I mean, here, watch this. This is Joe Biden on the stage during the Normandy ceremony. There he is, shaking Macron's hand, the French president, standing next to Jill. He bends over.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin.
God, is he crapping his pants? I said, well, look, I don't know. He's done it before. So if he's done it before, it stands to reason that maybe he would do it now. But look, I don't know. People were saying he was looking for a chair, trying to find a chair that he thought was there but wasn't. But even if that's true, how feeble and weak does he look? And right as he is about to start shaking the hands of veterans, he just pops smoke. Something ain't right, folks. Something is not right. And so, having just listened to the stupid words of Joe Biden and Blinken pushing for World War III, and after learning what the Democrats are using the 80th anniversary for D-Day for, I want to read you this, because again, this show is about honoring the legacy of those who came before us and comparing it to who we have leading us today. There's really no comparison. And I often wonder what World War II veterans, or what veterans who gave their lives back then would think about the state of the nation today. And I think we have some indication of how they feel. We're going to get to that in a second. But I want to read you this letter. Dear Mom and Pop and family, now that I'm actually here, I see that the chances of my returning home to you all are quite slim. Therefore, I want to write this letter now while I am yet able. I want you to know how much I love each of you. You mean everything to me, and it's the realization of your love that gives me the courage to continue. Mom and Pop, we have caused you innumerable hardships and sacrifices which you both made readily and gladly that we might get more from life. I've always determined to show my appreciation to you by enabling you both to have more of the pleasures of life, but this war has prevented my doing so for the past 3 years. If you receive this letter, I shall be unable to fulfill my desires, for I have requested this letter be forwarded only in the event that I do not return. You have had many times more your share of illness and death in the family. Still, you have continued to exemplify what true parents should. I'm sorry to add to your grief, but at all times realize that my thoughts of you are constantly, and that I feel in some way I am helping to bring this wasteful war to a conclusion. We of the United States have something to fight for. Never more fully have I realized that. There is just no other country with comparable wealth, advancement, or standard of living. The USA is worth a sacrifice. Remember that I love you each most fervently, and I'm proud of you. Consider Mary, my wife, as having taken my place in the family circle and watch over each other. Love to my family, Jack. That's Second Lieutenant John Keith Jack Lundberg, who is a navigator for the 534th Bomber Squadron, 381st Bomber Group Heavy, 8th Air Force, United States Army Air Forces. He was killed in action over Abbeville, France, shortly after D-Day when his B-17 Flying Fortress was hit by anti-aircraft fire. His body was discovered a year after his bomber was lost and re-entered at the American Cemetery in Normandy. So my question for you all listening, do you all feel that as a country that we've honored his sacrifice? Do you feel like we're worthy of that? How about this? Do you feel like our politicians, and this goes for Democrats and Republicans, do you feel like they're worth it? Do you feel like we're being led by the best of us? Or do you feel like America has been taken hostage by some of the most selfish, disgusting political hacks the world has ever known? Well, Martha McCallum on Fox News got a chance to ask a World War II veteran how he felt about the state of our nation today. Listen to what he says. It speaks volumes.
When you're here with all of these brothers and people who experienced the war as you did, and also the subsequent wars in Korea and Vietnam, what do you think about the state of our country today? How do you feel about the country that you worked so hard to stay free, to keep free?
The real truth?
Yeah.
I feel like a foreigner in my own country lots of times, and I don't like it. It makes my heart real heavy. And I just hope we can pull out of this. There's too much Hollywood going on in Washington all the time. The important subjects they don't cover. So the thing is, I hope all the guys will rally up and we'll go back and straighten it all out.
My favorite part of Band of Brothers, I mean, the whole series is amazing, but it's the interviews with the men at the beginning and the end, because I value what they say, and you should too. I can't tell you how many times I felt the same way. I mean, you do kind of feel like, as a combat veteran, I mean, it kind of makes me feel a little bit better that World War II veterans feel this way, like you're a foreigner in your own country. I felt many times like an exile in my own country, like somehow my experience of war has separated me from the rest of the American people. But I feel like our representatives, the people who should be caring about this country, care about themselves only, care about the position of power. They care about like being famous, and they use a political platform to become like Z-list celebrities. They love having staff shuffle about after them. They love being called congressman or congresswoman. Look at Nancy Pelosi, for God's sake. And not just her. There's some Republicans who fall into this category as well. Look how much Nancy Pelosi's net worth has skyrocketed since she's been in Congress. Do you think that's something that our founders intended? Do you think maybe they're putting themselves first and not our country? Do you think maybe we need more people who love and care about our country, who understand what time it is, who see things falling apart? We are literally falling apart at the seams. Watching the way that Biden comported himself at that ceremony, I feel bad for the World War II veterans. It's terrible. It's terrible. They deserve so much better. All right, let me take a quick break. We're going to talk about the weaponization of our system. Steve Bannon's sentencing happened today. It's just disgusting. We'll talk about President Trump and so much more in just a second. So bear with me. Let me tell you about Genesis Gold. Let's face it, the current geopolitical situation isn't great. And I just told you why. many reasons why. And under this administration, the Biden administration, the economy hasn't exactly inspired confidence. And I feel like that's kind of the understatement of the century, because it is so hard to afford just a regular American lifestyle today. And because of the Biden administration, Americans like you and like me are concerned about retirement savings, and for good reason. But there's good news. Gold has held its value since the dawn of mankind. And did you know that God is mentioned in every book of the, oh my gosh, I mess this up every single time, but did you know that gold was mentioned in every book of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation? It is. As a faith-driven precious metals company, Genesis Gold Group helps Americans protect their life savings from the threats facing our nation. And they're a faith-based company, which is pretty damn awesome. We need more of that in our country today. But instead, Genesis Gold Group actually want customers to be fully aware of all options, not just the ones that benefit the seller. And they educate you every step of the way. So get your free definitive gold guide to get started and learn more about investing in gold and protecting your retirement from uncertain times. Visit treasureandtrust.com now. Fill out the basic contact form, and a member of the team will be in touch. Again, that's treasureandtrust.com. Check them out. Also, Prepper Beef. America's food supply, totally under attack. Beef is the primary target, with everything from climate change to bird flu being wielded against cattle. And I'm sure you saw the news out of Mexico that somebody who is like very, very ill, has been bedridden for 3 weeks, died of bird flu. And it seemed like that was like headline news everywhere yesterday. And it seems like, hey, it's election season. It must also be pandemic season. But it behooves Americans to stock up on long-term storage beef. And we have the solution. Preparewithbeef.com is a veteran-owned company that sells premium steaks with a 25-year shelf life. Ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, sirloin. They don't sell the beef crumbles or beef chunks that other survival food companies offer. At preparewithbeef.com, my listeners and my viewers can take 25% off with the promo code RVM. Stock up now before you're eating cricket burgers, because look at all those cicadas. You can bet that the Biden administration and the climate change fanatics are going to be pushing cicada burgers on us before we even realize what's coming. So preparewithbeef.com, use promo code RVM. Again, check them out. Awesome company. Again, folks, these sponsors, conservative companies that step up during what is a very dangerous time, they help us keep the lights on, and they help us keep this show independent. So we are grateful for them. Steve Bannon, sentenced to prison, told to report by July 1st. I want to remind you all that in his first act as D.C. attorney, U.S. attorney for D.C., Matthew Graves, who was a Biden appointee, indicted Bannon for contempt. And Graves recommended something like absurd 6 months in prison and over a $200,000 fine for Bannon. His sentencing will take him out of the game, essentially, and send him to prison from July 1st until just through the election. You think that that's a coincidence? The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, one of the worst attorney generals in American history, is overseeing the weaponization of the Justice Department. He's a sycophant for Biden. Can you imagine, by the way, if this guy was on the United States Supreme Court? This guy is incarcerating Steve Bannon for failing to provide privileged information to Congress. Now, keep in mind, Steve Bannon's like, hey, I work for the president. I have executive privilege. I don't have to tell you anything of what I'm doing. Right? That's a real thing. Meanwhile, Garland told the American people that he's not required to provide information to Congress if he doesn't agree with the subpoena. Do you remember that? So here's Mayor Garland telling people, I don't have to give Congress the information. I can reply to whatever subpoena in any way that I want. Meanwhile, he's putting Steve Bannon in prison for the same damn thing. Trump himself is going to be sentenced to prison, could be sentenced to prison, could be sentenced to house arrest, but Trump gets sentenced next month. We see what time it is, folks. Do the Republicans, do our allies, do our elected representatives see what's happening? Obviously, this is about shutting down the America First movement. Obviously, this is about shutting you up. It's about shutting me up. They're using people like Bannon and they're using people like Trump as a way to do it. But the Democrats have fully engaged in destroying their opposition. They're not hiding it anymore. And yesterday, Admiral McRaven, who oversaw the bin Laden raid, who is a Navy SEAL, spent a lifetime in the special operations community, killing Americans' enemies, writes this op-ed in the Washington Post saying that, hey, titled "A Plea for Civility," lay down your rhetorical arms. And McRaven goes on Fox and Friends and does this interview with Steve Doocy. And in the interview itself, he goes, McRaven said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the gist. I'm not a fan of Trump. I think the jury got it right. I hope Trump's not elected. In his Washington Post article, McRaven said that Republicans need to do this. Again, think about the moment that we're in. I don't know what it is with these generals and these admirals where they hit a certain rank and they just turn into morons. They just turn into people who can't think for themselves. Of course, I'm painting in broad strokes. Not every general or admiral feels this way. But the vast majority of admirals and generals who seem to come up around the Biden administration or were given platforms during the Biden administration seem to be garbage liberals. But McRaven says in the Washington Post interview that Republicans need to support the verdict in the legal system. The Republicans need to support the jurors. Not one single juror stood up during the Trump trial and said, no, I'm not participating in this. I don't believe he's guilty. Not a single American could find the courage to do it. Now, look, I get it. The might and power of the federal government with Democrats on the hunt is a scary thing. But McRaven's saying we should just take it, just accept it, find a way to bridge the political divide. Bridge the political divide. It's another thing he said. McRaven said on Fox, and I'm not trying to rail against. Yeah, I am trying to rail against McRaven. Actually, what the hell are you thinking, man? McRaven said to say it wasn't a fair trial is to destroy our judicial system and harm America. Folks, this is completely ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous from someone who attained such a high rank in the United States military to be spewing uncritical things like this and to completely not recognize the moment that we are in. Republicans are being annihilated and destroyed and thrown in prison by the Democrats, and they're doing it gleefully. They're not going to stop. What do you think would happen in a conflict, Admiral McRaven, when you're facing an enemy that's hell-bent on destroying you, where you just say, you know what, I'm going to throw my arms down and do everything that I can to bridge the divide? You know what, you're just going to make for a real damn easy target. It's frustrating because people like McRaven who have seen the predations of the enemies of America should know better. It assumes, like this guy just assumes that our legal system has not been completely and entirely corrupted, because it has. It's especially egregious because it just shows a stunning lack in ability to critically think. I mean, in the face of all the evidence that these Trump trials have shown us, I mean, that they're just total Soviet-style show trials. They're shams. And Admiral McRaven believes that the process played out as intended? I mean, we speak out about Soviet-style sham trials if they happened in Russia, do we not, Admiral? We speak out about this stuff when it happens all around the world, do we not, Admiral? So then, as American citizens, do we not have a greater obligation to speak out about it and be critical of it when it happens here, Admiral? I think that we do. And to prove my point with an example from today, let's talk about just Bannon's, what I believe to be unlawful and unconstitutional imprisonment. January 6th committee was illegitimately formed. They hid evidence from the American people. They crafted a narrative that was filled with propaganda. They smeared innocent people along the way. They deleted all of their evidence. And now Bannon's going to jail for being held in contempt of that bastardized sham committee? Give me a break. You can't see this? America needs people like you to speak up, not speak out in support of this ridiculous authoritarian police state that Biden is running here in America. And what's kind of, look, I like Sean Hannity, but I don't like his interview with President Trump. I just didn't like it. Because he kind of talked about, the retribution and 2 tiers of judgment. People are going to say you're going to attack your political foes when you get into office. Just listen for yourself, and then we'll discuss it.
Will you pledge to restore equal justice, equal application of our laws, end this practice of weaponization? Is that a promise you're going to make?
You have to do it. But it's awful. Look, I know you want me to say something.
No, I don't want you to say. I'm asking.
But I don't want to look naive.
I don't want
What they've done to the Republican Party, they want to arrest on no crime. They want to arrest the person that won the nomination in a landslide. There was nobody even close. In a landslide. The person that got millions of votes, more votes than any other sitting president in history in the last election. The person that won an election that he wasn't expected to win against Hillary Clinton in 2016. They want to arrest that person on no crime. They want to arrest, there was no crime. There was no criminality, there was no crime. And you can go back to all of these legal scholars. They can't believe what's happening. Some of them don't even like me, and they're saying this is a very, very dangerous thing that's happening. No, we can't.
So the reason why I didn't like Hannity's approach in this interview, and again, it's depressing. He's on our side. What he's talking about is restoring equal justice, which I support. But the Democrats have crossed a line, throwing innocent January 6 prisoners who have no power in prison for years, some of whom were in solitary confinement for rattling a fence, elevating sentences, enhancing sentences using bogus novel legal theories like 1512C, obstruction of an official proceeding. Trump is facing over 90 felony counts. 94 fake indictments, I should say. And somehow the narrative on our side, and we're asking the president, someone who is the front runner for the presumptive Republican nominee, and if the election were held today, he would win. We're saying to him on our side already, hey, wait, look, if you win, you're not going to go after these people, are you? You're not going to go after the people who weaponize the system illegally, are you? It's just it's frustrating to me because accountability is a necessary component of a healthy and well-functioning nation. If the ruling class faces no accountability and then they go a step further and they throw how ostentatious they're being in our faces all the time because they face no accountability, again, our nation will not survive long. People do not tolerate that. So why then do we have people on our side saying that Trump should not hold people accountable who broke the law and perverted our system and created this lawfare hellscape that exists in our country right now. One of the people who did that was Andrew McCabe. And isn't it interesting that McCabe, who pushed, by the way, former FBI guy McCabe, pushed the debunked Russia collusion hoax. He's all over TV right now talking about how Trump's going to throw him in prison. Listen.
It's great to have you here because just few people know the inner workings of the FBI better than you do. And you've also personally experienced the pressure from Donald Trump. And when you see him promising this wholesale takeover of the Justice Department, I wonder how you worry about what that would look like.
Yeah, Caitlin, I mean, I worry a lot about it. And I think it's, you know, when you think about these things and you try to predict how Donald Trump is going to react or the steps he's going to take, you really don't have to go any further than listening to the things he says and does. I mean, his comments recently are offensive and horrendous, but they're not surprising in any way. He's been saying this for quite some time. I will be your retribution is his refrain to his supporters. So, you know him, you know what motivates him. He is not a person who's driven by principle or ideology. He is someone who's entirely transactional. And if he feels like he's been wronged in some way, then he focuses on revenge and vengeance. And so he's made it perfectly clear that that's what he's going to do. And in the process of seeking that, he is going to he runs the risk of really dismantling and greatly incapacitating the Department of Justice and the FBI. And that is something that Americans on both sides of the political aisle should be worried about. Yeah. We depend on those institutions to protect us.
Well, what do you think
and he is proposing to tear them down.
What do people inside the FBI think when they hear a comment like that?
It's terrifying. It's frightening. I have a lot of conversations with former colleagues, people who are or were in the intelligence and law enforcement community and may have worked in, the Obama administration, other places. And, people are really trying to assess, what is life going to be like if Donald Trump wins a second term? And on a very personal level, I mean, these are torturous discussions with their family members about whether or not they have to leave the country to avoid being unconstitutionally and illegally detained. I mean, people are actually worried about being thrown in jail or grabbed in some sort of extrajudicial detention. And I think...
So Andrew McCabe is talking about fleeing the country. Folks, listen to me. These people, they should face accountability for the lies and the damage that they've done to this country. These people have committed multiple felonies that aren't made up like the ones that Trump is facing. If there's not some level of accountability for the deep state in this country, entrenched bureaucrats, the blob, whatever, this country will just continue to descend into chaos. So to Republicans just surrendering before we even have the opportunity to do that, my God, it's just you clearly don't understand what time it is. You just don't. I mean, people that lied about the Hunter Biden laptop, those intelligence officials, I mean, that was 100% election interference. I mean, just listen for yourself. These people shouldn't be held accountable.
Talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
I have to respond to that.
Please.
Because, look,
there
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russian?
It was all a hoax, all of it. Every bit of it, folks. This country cannot survive if we don't hold these people accountable. And why our own side continues to surrender before we've had the opportunity to do that is beyond me. So I ask you this. everything that I just showed you, the state of this country, where we are today, do you think that we've lived a life that's worthy of the sacrifice you gave to everything on D-Day? Are we honoring their legacy by allowing our country to descend into this hellscape that's almost unrecognizable? They would certainly not approve of where we are today. I know that you all do whatever you can. I'm not talking about you all. I'm talking about America in general. I just worry. You know, obviously just giving the speech yesterday and talking about combat, and then watching Biden talk about our veterans. You listen to what that veteran, that young second lieutenant who perished, who was part of the heavy bomber group in World War II, called war a wasteful conflict, and that's just the truth. I wonder if all soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, I wonder if they all feel the same way, regardless of whatever war that they're fighting in. But it seems to me that those veterans, regardless of the conflict, have a hell of a lot more wisdom than our politicians today. It's because they put themselves before, or they put the needs of our country before themselves, whereas our politicians today put themselves before the country. And put in very simple terms, I think that's part of the reason. That is the reason why we are where we are today as a country. So anyways, folks, we're over the hour. Over the hour. But I'm grateful for you all being here today. Make sure you smash that like button, that little green thumb beneath the video. Smash it. Need your help. Get us towards that leaderboard. Tell your family and your friends to subscribe to Battleground Live. We want them in the trenches fighting to save this country. Check out rvmnews.com. Awesome news, politics, culture, sports. rvmnews.com. Awesome website. Seriously, really awesome website. You should go there for all your stuff. It's a great independent news site. I use them for everything as well. But check them out. And in the meantime, folks, got an amazing show planned for you tomorrow. Getting back in the swing of things after coming back from the speech. It feels good to be back with you all today. But as always, folks, I'll see you tomorrow night. God bless you all. And God bless this exceptional nation that we call home. Take care. Good night. See you tomorrow. Good night. See you tomorrow. Good night.